Hello, welcome to this course where I'm going to be taking you through how to do a communications audit. If you don't know the basics about why a communications audit is important, please visit my YouTube page. For those of you that this may be your first time interacting with me, my name is Adedoyin Jaisimi. I am the co-founder of the Comms Avenue, which is a capacity building platform for communicators across Africa. And we currently have over 1,200 members from 20 African countries in our community. I also work as a communications advisor where I advise organizations, corporate organizations, philanthropic and development organizations about their communications. And I'm also a corporate trainer and I also lecture. So yes, I do a lot of things, but I would say that one of the things that I really, really love to do is to pass knowledge and information about the practice of communications, especially across the continent. And this topic is one that I feel is very important and beneficial for every communications professional. So if you're yet to watch the video on YouTube, that will give you some sort of background as to why this is important. But since you're here watching this course, I guess it's safe to say that you already see the importance of the communications audit. So this course, I'm really just going to take you through the practical elements. Like I said, the YouTube video really takes you through the basics, why it's important, gives you an overview. But here we're going to go deep down into the nitty-gritty of it. So what do you want to find out from your audit? One of the first things an audit really does for you is that it helps you to know if your current communications plan and strategy is working. Sometimes what we typically do in our work is before the end of the year, we create a communication strategy. In January, we're, running full steam, implementing, but we don't look back to see, is it working? Is it not working? Where are assumptions, the assumptions that that strategy was based on, has it changed? And then the end of the year comes and realize, oh, we missed the mark in terms of certain metrics, but then it is too late to do anything about it. That's why a communications audit is very important. I advise that you do it quarterly because things change. In fact, the world that we're in now, January 2023 till now, a lot of things have happened. There are a lot of changes that you may need to factor into your communication strategy because either your audience taste and preferences, even priorities may have changed. Things may have changed in your industry and nations. Things are happening all over the world in different nations. So nationally, things may also have changed. And then you also want to see from your audit, how were past communications handled? How was it received? Your messaging, how did it resonate? Because you can't keep doing the same thing and then you expect different results. But if you don't probe, if you don't do the audit, it's very difficult for you to see what should change or what can be improved upon. And then you also need to be able to find out what do your key audiences really know about your business, the service, products, and your organization in general. And this is something that I found very amusing in the comms audit that I've done for different organizations, is that their customers do not even really know what the organization is about. It's something that we take for granted. We assume that people know, but when you ask questions, you realize, oh my goodness, these people don't really know what our organization is about. Or sometimes they have a certain idea, but it's not the idea that you want them to have. It's not the perception that you want them to have. So your audit helps you to see where there are gaps and disparities as well. And then obviously it helps you to see the strengths and weaknesses in your organization's communications. And then you're able to tackle that. And then you're able to see opportunity and improvement areas for your organization's communications when you do a comms audit. So this is something that I believe is very, very important and critical for you to do as a communications professional. And an audit is not something that you should take for granted. So let's get started. How exactly are you to carry out this audit? Now, typically, you can either do it internally. So that means that you, as the communications manager of the organization, you're the one that would do the audit, or you can get an external consultant who will do the audits. The external consultant, one of the benefits of using an external consultant is they come with fresh eyes. And sometimes you find that senior leaders, they listen more to the external consultants than the people internal, but that shouldn't be. However, I really do recommend everyone whether you're working internally or you're working as a consultant, to be able to know how to carry out an audit. And once you do it and your organization sees the benefit of it, they'll be able to back you. You'll be able to have a business case for why it needs to be carried out in the future. So what exactly do you want your audit to do? What do you need to audit? Now, an audit can be a full-on audit of the organization. And depending on resources, time, you may decide, okay, you know what, I want to focus on internal communications. You may decide, okay, I want to focus on external communication, but the sweet spot is being able to do internal and external. That also would depend on the size of your organization. So if you're working with a multinational, for example, you know that if you want to do a thorough audit of internal communication, if you have different branches across maybe a region, for example, it will take you some time. So you need to be able to be clear on the scope, because it's very important. How comprehensive do you want this audit to be? Where do you want to focus on? Are you doing both? What kind of tools will you need? What kind of information are you hoping to get? Are you trying to see if messages within the company, messages within employees, is it resonating? Is there a cohesive understanding of the organization, of the value proposition? Because think about it, if you have employees who are client facing, but they don't understand the key messages of the organization, they don't understand the values, they don't understand what the organization is about, what exactly would they be telling the clients? And I've seen that over time, that when I then do the audits, I realized that one employee, maybe the people in sales are saying something totally different. Another person in the marketing department is saying something different, somebody in operations. There needs to be a cohesive understanding of what the organization is about, and this would impact on how they interact with people, with customers, and even what they say about the organization on social media. So really, really be clear on what exactly it is that you want to audit. Number two, you need to map out the audit. So don't just rush into it. So sit down and think it through. You've looked at the scope. You've determined, okay, I want to focus on internal. I want to focus on external, or maybe I want to do both. If I'm going to do both, what do I need? Who do I need to interview? I want to speak to senior leaders. I want to speak to department heads of the different units within the organization. I want to speak to all of the staff within the organization. Now, depending on the numbers, you're then going to ask yourself, is it going to be feasible for me to do one-on-one interviews, or should I do one-on-one interviews for the department head, and then I will do focus group for everyone in the department? What I found in my experience, that it's good to be able to engage employees when their managers or their supervisors aren't there, because they open up more, they're more honest, and you assure them that, you know, the results or everything that will be said will be confidential, because the idea is not for you to go and report, oh, somebody in the maybe customer service department said XYZ. No, you need insights, and you must make them feel confident and relaxed enough to be able to share this information with you. So you want to think about, how will you go about media analysis? Are we going to, this is going to be especially important if you're going to be looking at external communications audit. So we're going to look at our website. Do we want to look at media analysis? What tools are we going to use? So for the interviews, like I said, you need to be able to identify who you're speaking to, so that you're telling them in advance that, oh, this is what we're doing, this is the kind of insights that we want to get, and then you prepare your questions ahead. So there's a lot of planning and thought that goes into doing this. And then the surveys, who will you reach out to? Which team members? How would you reach out to them? You need to be very clear. And I'm going to take you through a case study of an actual audit that I did, just to talk you through the process. But let me just talk you through what you need to do, and then we'll go to the case study so you can see the practical applications of all of these things that I am telling you. Now, after you've mapped out the scope of your audit, you need to then move on to review your existing and past communication. Now, this is where sometimes having an external consultant is helpful, because if you did a campaign, or if you created some sort of content or communication idea that you implemented, there's a way that you're going to be protective of your work. You're going to be less critical and less objective, let's be honest. But it's possible for you to be able to just step back, you know, from your work and say, is this really working? Did it really achieve the objectives that we wanted it to achieve? How were the people responding to it? So you look at your existing and past communication, And then you say, first of all, how is our organization communicating with our target audience and our stakeholders? Are we relying on digital platforms, or we have a more personal connection with them? Or it's more, newsletter once every month. And then how do they respond? Do we get likes, or do we get requests? Subscribe me from this newsletter. I'm not interested. Do they engage with our content on social media? If we put videos on LinkedIn, are there comments? Do we get messages? Because sometimes you will find that audiences or stakeholders, they will send you a message. Oh, I saw this on LinkedIn. This was absolutely brilliant. They may not drop a comment on LinkedIn, but they may send you a message. How many of those are we getting? How frequently? Is it positive? Is it negative? Has the messaging and content being consistent? Look, it will shock you when you do this review how there have been inconsistencies in your messaging, how there have been inconsistencies in your branding. And I have seen this from organizations, whether it is small or big organizations, which is why I need you to be very objective when you're doing this. You really want to be able to probe, because at the end of the day, what we want to do is to be able to close the gaps. What we want to be able to do is to say, look, this hasn't been working. This is what we need to change. This is what we need to do differently. And then you want to do a media analysis. So look at all the coverage of the media concerning your organization. You do some social media listening. Is this consistent? Is the narrative consistent with how you want your organization to be portrayed or represented? If there are any kind of inconsistencies, or you see that there is a negative narrative or a different narrative, you then need to be asking yourself a question, or asking yourself several questions. What is the reason for this negative narrative? Did we miss an opportunity to respond to the media? Maybe they reached out for comments from your CEO, and maybe your CEO did not respond, or were we too slow in responding to something? Or were we just very laid back about pushing the right narratives? It's very, very important. And when you do this, you're able to also pick the kind of words that the journalists and media platforms are using when describing your organization, because those are the things that stick. Those are the things that people would remember, what they see in the media. Oh, this organization where they're always firing women. Or maybe it was just a one-off, right? So the media is very great in terms of pushing out narratives, but you need to be very, very clear, and you need to be able to ascertain that it is the right narrative that you want for your organization. There's the kind of perception that you want them to have. And then were there media opportunities that your organization could have taken advantage of but didn't? And this is not even just media opportunities, whether there were industry events or things related to your area of expertise in terms of your offerings. Was there something, maybe there was a national event, something that was happening? For example, in communications right now, there's the Africa Communications Week, there was the Africa Public Relations Association conference. If you are an agency or a communications firm, those were good opportunities to be able to say, look, let's not only network, but let's also promote what it is that we're doing. Have you missed some sort of media or industry opportunities? And were there opportunities that your organization shouldn't have pursued? Because you find that sometimes organizations jump on certain things that doesn't really align with their brand, doesn't bring so much value, is more costly, and all of that. Your review or your audit actually would reveal all of these things. So what you need to do when you then do that review, and this has to be very, very thorough. How far back should you go? It really, really depends. I like to look at a year. Now, depending on, because you're going to do this for the first time, you can go back a year, 2 years, depending. And then what you would then do going forward is to look at it year on year. So in this time last year, where were we? In this time 2 years ago. So the audit that you do now and in the future, they also feed into each other. And that's the beautiful thing about the audit. It shows you, okay, this is where we were in May 2023. By May 2024, you're able to say, oh, we've made this progress, we've made these changes. Note down your findings, create the list of what worked, what's working, and what didn't. Next thing is to review your channels and your digital footprint. So you start with your website. A lot of people's websites, you find that there are links that don't work. There are things that you're like, so they will say subscribe or click here, maybe download this report, and then you put your email address, you don't get the report, or things that are not functioning the way they should. Essentially, you need to test it out. You need to test out what messaging are we putting on our website. Have we neglected our website? Is our website even up to date? So we have something that we're currently promoting and there is no trace of it anywhere on our website. There is no trace of current media activities. There's no trace of what's going on within the organization. No news, no announcement. our website is just a landing page for your information only. It's not a place of interaction. It's not a place that our target audience are excited to come to. That is what your review would, you're going to have to look at it really objectively, testing all the buttons, looking at the messaging on each page, looking at the typo. I wouldn't name the organization, but it's a very, very big multilateral organization, and they have errors on some of their pages. I'm like, how did they not even know that, these errors are there? Because somebody has just said, what, we created the content on the website, we're done with it, but you need to be able to review it. You need to go and read, is this content even relevant? Is the language, because an organization is not just static. An organization is growing, an organization is evolving. So you must be able to go to your website and say, this information we have on our homepage, how relevant is it? How up to date is it? Do we need to refresh it? Do we need to refresh the language? And that's really important to do. You want to review your social media pages. It's essentially the same thing that you would do. You're looking at your branding, you're looking at your messaging, you're looking at the tone. Are we conversational one day and the next day we're sounding so serious? Are we, operating with a tone that is very professional, and then tomorrow we're trying to sound cool? You're going to be confusing your audiences that way. This usually happens when brands want to talk to all the generations. So they're like, okay, today we're talking to millennials, today we're talking to Gen Zs. But there's a middle point that helps people to know who your brand is, because you can't be cool one day and then the next day you're sounding all professional and by the book. You have to be able to get a consistent voice that people associate with your brand. Same thing with your email newsletter. Are we just throwing out information, or is it engaging? What kind of content are we putting in? And then you will also be able to see inconsistencies in the content that you put on all of these platforms. Maybe you realize on your website you're promoting that you have engaged 1,000 people in certain communities, and then in your newsletter it's 900, and on the social media it's 600. Clearly there's going to be confusion. So you're not just looking at the information, you're looking at the consistency of the content, consistency of the information. You're looking at, is it up to date? Is it relevant? Is it engaging? What is the tone? And then you're also looking at what is the feedback as well. Then you're looking at every other internal and external communication channel that you have. So if you have internal communication channels, you want to review it. You want to review the information. How frequently do we post? How relevant, how meaningful is it? Are we bombarding people with information? Are we making sure that this space is a space for two-way engagement, especially for internal communication channels? Is it a space for two-way engagement? And you want to look at your digital footprint. Do a Google search, do social media listening, and then see the narrative. If you just Google your organization, if you just do a search on Instagram, if you just do a search on Twitter, and then you may use some of these more advanced social listening tools, and you'll be able to see, oh, wow, there's this current narrative that's going on. There's a conversation that we didn't get on top of it. Now it's getting critical mass. And if you've watched or if you purchased my course on issues management, I talk about how if you let certain narratives or certain complaints on social media, if you ignore them, if you don't attend to them, how they can escalate from being, an issue that one person had to becoming an issue that then blows up into a crisis. When you do your communication audit and this review, you're going to be able to see all of these things, conversations that people are having. Maybe someone just said, oh, this product came in late. That, oh, we need to flag this up. Why did that product get there late? Because if one person is saying that they had a late delivery, 2 people, 3 people, 4 people, what's going to happen? This organization is an organization that delivers late. That's how narratives begin. So what is the tone of the media coverage? I talked about this as well. You need to note inconsistencies. Where are we saying, this thing is red and this place is white, or this thing is, just general inconsistencies. Where are there discrepancies? These are things that will affect your communication. These are things that would affect how the public perceives you and what it is they say about your organization. And then you'll be able to see whatever gaps that need to be closed. Now, when you do that, I hope you can see that this is a lot of work, but the beauty of it is the depth and the level of information that you will get. Absolutely, absolutely valuable. Every time I do a communication audit for an organization, they're always so surprised with the findings. So you build on your findings from the review of existing and past communication. By getting insight from employees, your customers, your clients, you really need to talk to people. And you can either do interviews, focus groups, and do surveys. Now, I would advise that you actually engage people by speaking to them. Surveys are fantastic and great, especially if you have a big organization, but you also need to allow people to express themselves, which is why focus groups are great, because you may not be able to do one-on-one interviews for 100 employees, but you can bunch them in groups of 10, for example, and have a focus group conversation. And in the case study, I will show you how you can do that. So the goal really is to get their perspective about your organization's communications, what resonated, what didn't. I remember a client that I engaged with, and the complaint was, oh, our people, our staff, they don't engage with our content on social media. We're always forcing them to like, we're also forcing them to repost. That's because it doesn't resonate. That's because there's something about this organization that, they're just not identifying it. Because if you're working in an organization that you love, that you resonate with, when you see their content on social media, you're proud to be affiliated with this organization. So there is a gap somewhere, and you're able to probe further as to what is the gap. Is it that our content is too boring? Is it that it doesn't relate to your department? Because sometimes a department might say, well, that doesn't have to do with me. Or sometimes it may be like, well, you guys forced us to do this. You see some videos where the staff are dancing and you can tell that they were forced by the social media team to do it. You must determine if your organization is speaking with one voice to your internal and external audiences. During focus groups that I've done with employees within an organization, I've realized that there's a fragmented voice. This team believes this, that team believes that. There isn't a common consistency. In fact, there was an organization where there were different opinions as to what the name of the organization meant. That was a critical red flag, especially for those who were customer facing, because in the name is supposed to be the value, it's supposed to be the essence of the brand. So if there's a different understanding of what this organization means, what our brand means, there's going to be a problem in terms of communication. Still on the interviews, you're starting off with, I usually like starting off with the employees, but you can also start off with the clients. And the reason why I prefer to start with them is because, look, how can you communicate externally if your people internally do not even understand or are not even agreed on or have a united view of what your organization is about? So when I start internally, I'm able to see the gaps, and then it also helps me to know what to ask the clients and the customers. So for the employees, you want to ask what the organization's brand represents to them. What does it mean to them? What are the words they associate with this organization? In doing this, you also start saying certain things about the organizational culture that will be relevant for internal communication. How do they define the organization's purpose? Are they really clear on why this organization exists? Sometimes you see founders and senior leaders that are so passionate about the organization and what the organization does, and then you ask the employees and they're like, well, we have a totally different view. Surely that passion must be able to flow down to everyone within the organization. What is their understanding of the organization's brand values? It would interest you to know that the organizations that you go on their website, they have these brand values with the acronyms, but nobody internally knows them. So shocking, I've seen it. And then you need to ask them to define what the organization's unique value proposition is. And this is where, you're looking at what makes this organization stand out. So if the organization is saying, look, our quality of service is what makes us stand out, our excellence, and the people in-house are saying, no, it's something else, then they're going to be communicating something different. They're going to be approaching the brand in a different way. Then you can see that there is a disparity. So you want to find out from them what's working and what's not working with regards to the way the organization communicates. And this is really important, especially if you have an organization that is multi-generational. So if you have Gen Zs, millennials, you have the generation, is it Y now? I've sometimes lost in, let me call them baby boomers, yeah. You need to understand what's working and what's not working. Sometimes you will find that if you have a multi-generational generation within your organization, you may need to tailor your messaging to suit them. You may need to talk about different platforms. That's on internal communication, and I won't go into that. But yeah, you're able to see where there are gaps. And then you need to ask them about challenges. You need to ask them what could be done better so that they really become brand ambassadors and brand advocates. I really believe that if organizations can leverage their employees as brand advocates, that does a lot for an organization. That does a lot for promoting the culture, promoting the key message, because the employees actually are an important and critical communications channel. So carry out interviews. Like I said before, these can be one-on-one interviews. These can be focus groups. Focus groups are fun. They're interesting. I think the only downside for me is some people tend to talk more than others. So if you have people that are quiet, so you need to learn how to master getting out the information from people. And then if they were forced into the focus group, you know, they're like, what are we here for? So you need to get them to open up and talk. And I would, again, in the case study, show you some of the tactics that I've used to do that. And the employees doesn't just mean the staff on the lower level. You want to look at management. You want to look at the senior leaders. You just want to have that broad understanding. Now, you may not be able to interview everyone if this is a big organization, but make sure that you have a representative sample so that your findings, when you then come up with your recommendations and you begin to implement, you'll actually see improvements that move the needle. Now, for customers and clients, why did they choose this organization's product or service? You will really be surprised as to how this answer will show you opportunity or threat areas. Like, I remember there's certain products, if you know the red cup that then became associated as the cup for drinking alcohol, they just created a plastic cup, but then that red cup, when you see it now, you see it in parties, it had a different use case for the consumers. And you must be able to know, why do you choose our product? Why do you choose our service? Because those things help you to build on making sure that your value proposition to them is strengthened. And you begin to incorporate this in your key messages to keep them to stay, to keep them as people that will be loyal to your brand, and then people that will begin to advocate for your brand at the end of the day. How did they perceive your organization? This is an opportunity area for you to know what's not working. Like, you know, if the perception is bad, or it's not as you would want it, or it's totally different, this is where you need to know down, okay, we need to change this is not right. Because when you're doing and having these conversations, please have at the back of your mind the key messages, what it is that the organization stands for, what it is that the organization wants to communicate. So as you're listening and carrying out these interviews, what you're doing, your benchmarking is what this person is saying. Is there an alignment with what our organization is saying it is? Is there an alignment with who our organization is positioning itself as? And if there is no alignment, where can we change? And that's where your recommendations will begin to come in. In what ways do they engage with the organization? Maybe they only engage on social media. Maybe they only send emails. Maybe, they go on your website and they're absolutely frustrated. You need to know. This can also reveal channels that maybe you're not paying attention to certain channels, and you realize, wow, a lot of our customers are interacting with us on TikTok. Now, for your customers, you can do both surveys and focus group. You may not be able to have one-on-one interviews with all your customers, but it's also good to have conversations, because conversations, I find that people open up. People don't like surveys, so you really need to be creative in getting people to do surveys. But I found like engaging with them one-on-one, it's time consuming, yes, but you will be so surprised at the kind of insights that you will get. And I also like the opportunity for follow-up questions. Someone says something that you pick up on, and they go further, and you're like, this is interesting. We haven't thought of that. We haven't seen it from this perspective. Then you want to see how they interact with the content and communication from your organization. Do they scroll past, or are they always looking out for the content? So you have some organizations that people are always looking for maybe if they have a podcast, they're looking out for a new episode, they're looking out for something that's coming up on the website. How do they engage and interact? What is their assessment of how this organization communicates? And be willing to listen to brutal feedback. Are they impressed? Are they like, you guys are doing the bare minimum? What is there? Or are they indifferent? If they're indifferent, it's also a problem, because you want them to be engaged. So if they're indifferent, you need to know why. So as you are having this conversation and asking, you need to be able to know why, which is why I like interviews and focus groups as opposed to surveys. Surveys, you may not be able to know why. What you can do is you can send out a general survey to everyone, asking certain things, and then use the answers and insights from the surveys to ask deeper questions in interviews and focus group discussions. So that means that surveys, you're able to reach maybe like 200 of your customers, and then you drill down on certain themes and certain topics. Maybe you drill down by geographical location. You may want to drill down by gender, just so that you have a more robust picture of it. You can see why people often prefer to get an external consultant. But honestly, this is something that can be done internally, especially if, you know, your organization is able to give you the support that you need to get this done. And then, have they recommended your organization before? Let me tell you, if you know, your organization is offering a product or a service and your customers have not recommended the organization, there is a problem. Because think about it yourself as a human being. If you patronize a brand, you go somewhere and you love their service, you love the brand, you're most likely going to tell your friends, you're most likely going to tell the people in your network, hey, try these people out, I love them, even without them asking you to, even without them, you know, saying to you, oh, you know, this is a brand, please help me promote. I remember last year I needed to do something for the Comms Avenue. I needed something printed urgently, and then I just went on Instagram and then saw this person. Their Instagram page wasn't so great, and you know how it is with Instagram vendors. So I was like, oh God, I hope this person doesn't scam me. But the thing I wanted to pay for, it was so cheap. I said, okay, you know what? If I get scammed of this amount of money, I won't lose sleep over it. But this person not only delivered excellent work, delivered it in a timely manner. And I've been reaching out to the person ever since. I've recommended the person to like so many other people just because they did a great job. So you need to be able to know if they recommend your organization before. If they have, why? Why did you recommend the organization? Oh, I liked your customer service. Oh, I like, you know, how I feel when I come to your place. Oh, I like whatever it is. And if they've not, why haven't? That means there was a problem, or that means they don't really care about, you know, recommending. But you need to know, and asking why helps you to know. And then what do they believe are the strengths and the weaknesses of your organization? I found that sometimes what the organization sees as the strengths, by the time they speak to maybe employees and they speak to customers, they say something totally different. Again, the idea of this audit is for you to be able to spot gaps, for you to be able to spot disparities and discrepancies, and be able to see how you're able to bridge that, so that the understanding that your audiences have is consistent with the understanding and the messaging and the brand that you want the organization to occupy in the mind space of all your target audience. So I also believe that it's beneficial to speak to those who are yet to engage with your organization. So they're not your customers, they're not your clients, but maybe they have some sort of awareness about your brand. And there's certain brands and organizations that I know they exist. I've never had like interaction with them, but I already have a perception. Look, everybody has a perception about every brand, whether you're in people's faces or not. So it may be useful for you to also know. So what may be helpful here is you can do like an Instagram poll. You can do something. Now for this one, you don't have to do one-on-one interviews, because again, they're not your strict target audience, or they're not your customers. They could potentially become your customers. Maybe there's a reason why they're not engaging, but it's just good to get that perspective. That also helps you to balance the insight out. And then this is like one of my favorite parts, doing a SWOT analysis. So you use all the information that you've gathered so far, and then you'll be doing a SWOT analysis. But I would recommend that you do a SWOT analysis in terms of, you know, the communication and in terms of your industry, because there's certain way that an industry communicates that you need to be mindful of. So you want to look at the strengths. What are we doing well? And will require you to also look at a few organizations within your industry. What are they doing? What are they doing well? How are they communicating? So if you realize, oh, they get more engagement on their social media, oh, it seems like, you know, they have more customer testimonials, they seem to have multiple channels that are engaging on, you know, use that as a benchmark for yours. Or you see, oh, our organization is doing this differently, it's unique to us and no other person is doing this. So you need to look at the strengths that can be built on what communication methods are working well, and there will be strengths, but then there will also be weaknesses. What methods of communications aren't working well? What needs to be changed? We're slow in our responses, for example. We're slow in putting out important information about the organization. We're slow in updating our website. What are the opportunities that can be maximized? What external opportunities can you leverage on to improve communication? So, for example, our brand is known as advocating for certain causes. We can actually use that to build on CSR to create a critical mass that they begin to associate our brand with this, and this trickles down to you know, the core of what we do in terms of our product and services. You know, but when you do all of this, you'll be able to see what the opportunity areas are, and then what are the threats? What are the external things threatening your company's communication with your target audience? Is it the way your communicators communicate? Is it that you're slow with adopting technology? You'll find that even big organizations, they're slow with technological adoption. They're slow with moving on the trends, moving on things that will be beneficial. You need to be able to map that out, and you know the typical SWOT analysis, very visual. Strengths, you have the weaknesses, opportunities, opportunities and threats, so that it's very visual. And what you then need to do going forward is, how do we then take the strengths and the opportunities and really, really hone in on them? And then how do we transform the weaknesses and the threats so that we minimize it? And then we're pushing out, we're minimizing it, we're closing whatever gaps have created those weaknesses and threats. And then we're making sure that we're pushing our strengths, we're, honing in on our strengths and the opportunities that exist. And then when you do all of this, you would then develop your recommendations. Look, by the time you start having conversations, you will start saying, I don't know how to explain it. It's like light bulb will start coming up. By the time especially when you get to the point of speaking to your employees, senior leaders, speaking to your customers, you're going to start to see things. Maybe we can do this differently. You're going to start, analyzing. By the time you then do the analysis against your competitors and the benchmark, you'll be able to see, oh, this can be something we can do. So all of the information you got it from your audit so far, do a bird's eye analysis. Now, don't wait till the very end. So if you notice at the point I was saying, write down. At every critical stage, when you're doing the review of the secondary review or the review of media platforms, please write it out. Write every single thing out. Write the observation, so that when you're sitting down to do this bird's eye analysis, you're not going to start from scratch saying, okay, so here's what we saw from the website. Here's what you're already seeing, the summarized high points or high notes of each of those stages. You analyze the data from the interviews. I also need to speak a bit on analyzing the data from the interviews. So typically what you will do is you record the interviews, obviously with the permission of the interviewee, and then you listen. So you either record by actually using a recording device, or you take notes as well. But I recommend recording it so that you can listen. Sometimes you may miss, because you're so bent on writing, you may miss out things that you can probe further. So when you listen, you do all of that, you listen back. What you're listening for is, opportunity areas. What you're listening for are gaps. What are they saying? You're also listening for the way they describe certain things about your organization. What narrative, what words are they using? And then you're going to be, so imagine if you interview 5 people, where the 5 people consistent in the use of language that they did towards your organization. Did they use the same kind of language? Those are the things that you want to be noting and observing. What were the negative, were there any negative connotations to certain things about your organization? What were the positive things? You want to listen and you want to play back. Same thing with the focus groups. The focus group, again, I will show you in the case study. What I do in the focus group is I bunch the things that I want to know together, so that I'm listening to what people are saying, and then I can take their answers in groups rather than doing it individually. And I will show you practically what I mean. So if I want to know about their perception of the value proposition, I'm asking them and I'm noting down the different answers, so that when I open the slide on value proposition, maybe somebody says excellence, somebody says adoption of technology, somebody says our people, everything is there. And I'm seeing, oh, okay, 5 people said different things. 10 people actually said the same thing. So there's some sort of coherence here. There's some sort of understanding that this is what the value proposition is, or there's total disparity. So that really helps you to then analyze the information as well. So using your industry and competitor benchmark, you then begin to develop recommendations, what needs to be improved, what should be tweaked, what should be abandoned. You may find that, look, we're doing well and we're doing okay, but to be honest, I don't really think that I've done an audit where it's like, oh, there's nothing to be done. There's usually always something to improve upon, right? But you may find that maybe there's nothing to be abandoned, but maybe improvement and tweaks will need to be made. Now, let me say this, that it's important here for you to get the input of key stakeholders at this point, because the truth is that human beings we're resistant to change. We're resistant to doing things a bit differently. And we can get quite personal. Sometimes it may feel like, oh, you're attacking us, or you're saying that we're not doing things right. So what I do when I'm auditing is that, I start, having conversation with the senior leaders. Oh, interesting. I did this focus group, and this is what I'm sensing. I'm beginning to see a gap here. You want to have this conversation with your line manager and say, I'm noting that sales have a different perception from the marketing team. And I'm going to really probe further and see why that's the case. I'm like, oh, really? Oh, do you know that I spoke to our customers and this was the number one thing that they said about our organization? So you're beginning to get their buy-in, and you begin to say, I'm really thinking that we should channel something specifically for our loyal customers. I think that will really make a difference based on just the conversation that I've had, so that when they see it in your final report, it's not something that is going to be completely new and you're already working on getting buy-in. It's so, so important. I have a video on YouTube about getting internal stakeholder buy-in. You can do all of this great work, do all the recommendations. If there's no buy-in, that's the end of it. So finally, always frame your recommendations in terms of what will benefit the organization and help it in achieving its overall goals. Look, that's the most important thing. It's not about you. It's really not about the communications department. Let me be very honest. It's really about the organization. What does this organization want to achieve? And these recommendations, how will it help us to achieve our strategic objectives? Because at the end of the day, that's what the board wants to see. That's what the executives want to see. They want to see this helps us, or this has helped us to achieve our strategic objectives and goals for the year or for the period or whatever it is. And then you create your report and implementation plan. So you take your findings. Now, the findings here is not that you say, oh, Ada said XYZ about the company. Mildred said, no. You collate it, collate the answers, put them together, and then put your recommendations into a comparative report that can be shared. So what you want to do is that you want to show the findings and say, look, when we asked about the strengths of the organization's communications, this is what people said. In general, more people have the understanding of this as our value proposition. More people have an understanding of this as our purpose, or there is some sort of disparity that is problematic, just high level stuff. But it needs to be detailed also. It needs to be comprehensive. Your report has to be clear. It should be creative, and it should show the value of the audit that was done. And where do you see the value? You see the value in, oh, this is what we identified. This is an opportunity area. This is a gap. This is what we discovered internally and externally. And finally, you really need to have an implementation plan that shows how the changes and improvements will be implemented. So we're recommending this, and we're recommending that we'll implement this over a period of 6 months. And by the end of 6 months, this is what we hope to see for the brand of the organization, for the reputation of the organization. And this is how it will help the organization to achieve its strategic objectives. And it's important, please make sure that this audit that you're doing actually helps in closing the communication gap. Because imagine you've made recommendations and 6 months time, we're still where we are. It feels like, oh, you've wasted all of that time. And then if you brought in an external consultant, you've wasted money in doing this. So I also believe that it's better for you to present your report in a meeting so that you can answer questions, maybe doubts, and you can also clarify things. So like I promised you, let's look at a case study of the Rapid company. And this is, I just tweaked a live audit that I did, but I want to share some insights from there. Okay, so I've tweaked the name of the brand. So we're going to call this the Rapid brand. Now, the Rapid brand is an organization that really does, it's more of an e-commerce type of brand. They have customer service agents, salespeople, communications team. When I was called in to do the audit, it was because one of the value propositions, or one of the things that they had put out as their strengths, as their unique selling points, is their digital adoption. But then internally there was a gap because, there really wasn't that digital, the digital that they were communicating, they were not representing it, so to speak. So I needed to come in to do an audit to understand why, to even understand, is this organization truly digital? Is it communicating digital? If it's communicating digital, do people perceive it as being a seamless digital platform that it was trying to position as within the industry? So it was an audit to see positioning within the industries, and also positioning in the minds of the consumers and the employees as well. So I started with, everything that I've said to you so far in this class is what I did. So did the review of their channels, did review of their past communication, and they were very salesy in their content. They were very, oh, come and buy. There really wasn't anything that communicated the adoption of digital. There really weren't there were some explainer videos, but they were always tilted towards the buying. There was little understanding of how this organization operates and all of that. So when I did that, I then spoke to the employees. I actually broke them down. So the mid-level or senior level managers, I did them in one focus group, and I did the junior team in another focus group, because I wanted them to be able to speak freely. And this was I took them through pretty much the same session. So I started with a conversation. Remember, I said to you, if you start a focus group and you start asking questions directly, you might find that people are reluctant to answer, but they're not giving you the answer that you need. So I just started by, first of all, explaining the purpose of what we were doing, explaining the confidentiality of their response and answers, and explaining why it was also important for their work, because they have to also see the benefit of it for themselves. So we had a conversation about, so I said, let's examine two brands. So I said to them, what comes to your mind when you see the brand Nike? So, people share different things, running, whatever it is, but you could see that there's certain associations they had about the brand Nike. We did the same thing about Coca-Cola. What are some of the few words that come to your mind when you think about Coca-Cola? Now, what this kind of thing does for you, to be honest, what's important to this audit is not what they think about Coca-Cola, but I need them to be able to open up. I need them to be having conversations. And what this did was it kind of broke the ice. People said interesting things. Like, no, it doesn't mean that someone's like, oh, me, I drink 10 bottles of cookie there, just laugh and all. But remember, you have to be in control of the conversation. You have to have in mind what information it is that you want to get. And then, how have you used bottle of Coke to meet a need that you had? What I then did is, okay, now this is the crux of what I wanted to know, but that was the intro, that was the preamble. What does this Rapid brand represent? So I said, okay, so coming back to your brand, coming back to the Rapid brand, how would you describe the purpose and the reason why this brand exists? And again, people gave their answers. Some people's answers were the same. Some people were different. I remember when I was saying to you that typically in focus group, I bunch up the answers. So under here, reason why to solve e-commerce problem, whatever it is, I bunch them into the different responses that they gave. Obviously, I can't show you that final report because it's proprietary, but this, I tweak this for the different focus groups that I do. So all of the answers. So when I was doing the report, for example, how people describe Rapid's purpose. So I put down the different kinds of answers in like word cloud so that they could see the words that people were using. And the words were not associated with any person. So there was no identifier whatsoever. And then same thing with the brand values. What would you say distinguishes Rapid in terms of how it operates and all? And people will give different answers. So you can see this image, for example, is just to give an example. People gave different responses. Some were consistent with what the organization was already promoting. Some were not consistent. And then obviously take them away again. So the idea is get them relaxed, get them opened up, then bring something exciting again. So if Mercedes-Benz comes in, works as a person, how would you describe? So there were different responses and all of that. And then we did the same thing. What would you use to describe Rapid's personality? And then there were different answers. They were very enlightening because, again, it shows how they see the brand, how they perceive the brand. And that really helps you to see, okay, is there, consistency in the communication? Do they have the same understanding and perception of this brand? Because like I said, if people internally don't perceive the brand the way we want them to perceive it, how much more the people externally? So, I had a conversation, can you identify the differences between these brands? Again, you can do this as creatively as possible. But what I always suggest is try and make it creative, get them talking, get them to, see the kind of line of reasoning you want them to have, or line of thinking. So as that they're thinking about it, when you bring your brand, they are able to think about, okay, this is the answer. So how does the brand Rapid stand out? And then with them, this is a SWOT analysis from the report. I just did a snapshot from the report. So the strength was, look, this brand is innovative. It's forward thinking. There's a strong company culture. There's a strong product reputation. And I realized that their call center agents, they had the strongest team. They had, in terms of, the messaging that they were putting out, the opportunities of their local content creation, because you will see it in the weaknesses that, they were using foreign content to steal, foreign content and foreign marketing materials to sell out the product. So it wasn't really evident to people that this was an indigenous brand. It wasn't evident to people how this applied to them locally, because it was foreign examples in all of their marketing materials. And so leveraging content marketing to meet the needs. So they weren't also speaking to the specific needs of the customer and audiences, because they were so selling based to sell. They were not thinking about their audience. They were not thinking about the uniqueness of what they're bringing to the table as an organization. So heavy on the use of traditional media for an organization that wanted to be digital, low digital adoption, there was no coherent brand message or purpose because there were disparities. There wasn't any unique brand tone or personality or voice that you could associate with this brand. And that showed through in how people talked about, said different things for the personality, tone of voice, and all of that. And it was the same thing for the junior staff and the senior staff as well, which was very interesting. And there was just really a low clarity about what this brand was about and what it represented. And of course, the threats. And then, so I'm just showing you this in terms of how you collate the information, right? So the gaps. So going digital was a gap, local content, branding. So they had digital and social media team, people that were doubling as other things. So they were not effective. They couldn't create content. They couldn't think strategically. And you can't really do that. And there was little investment and support for digital. For a company that says, we're promoting digital, there needs to be investment, there needs to be support and backing from senior management. And that's what I presented to the executives. No local content, and you could not connect with your audience. It didn't resonate. So you can't be promoting a brand in Ghana and then you're showing me people from the US and America and hoping that I'll be able to relate. So commitment of management, for example, was needed. There wasn't anyone focused on creating content, and the parent brand really, really didn't have that. So this came out from speaking to the consumers. They were associating the brand with a product that the brand had. So he had a very popular product that people knew them by. So if I said product X, they knew. But if I said, Rapid Brand, they were like, Rapid Brand. Okay, the people that do this. So and that product X was like 1 in 20 products that they were doing. So people were using the most successful one as the associating factor with the parent brand. That's really problematic if you're going to be a house of brand that has multiple beneficial brands or multiple beneficial products for your target audience. So I also looked at the culture because, again, internally, you need to be able to assess the culture. It's one of the things that they asked me to also help them to review. So that was the feedback and what I saw from all the conversations. So I just looked generally at what does this brand represent. So remember when I told you about bunching up the answers, these were some of the answers that people gave. So innovation and technology. Some people said exclusive shopping experience. Some people said premium appliances. That's in their own mind. We only create premium appliances. But interestingly, when they said that, the organization did have products that were, for mass market. So if in their mind they're thinking we're premium, and their mass market products is also going to affect their communication. Sorry, this is meant to be e-commerce made easy. So these were some of the recommendations that, they needed a corporate brand using the house of brand strategy. This is a branding strategy that helps companies that have a wide variety of product portfolio to make sure that they're not associated with just one product. And then the marketing department obviously needed to be fleshed out. It was just one person doing multiple stuff. They needed to work on doing that. They needed to improve customer engagement, making sure that, so what usually happens is that after the sale, so it gets delivered, that's the communication, that's where it ends until the customer wants to buy new things. They're like, no, that's not how you build a brand, that you have to continue maintaining the lines of communication across all the different channels and touch points pre and post a sale. And then internal communication as well, making sure that digital was truly incorporated into the DNA of the brand. So that is an example of a case study that I did. And it was really, really interesting, the insights and the findings. So let's go back to wrap up this entire course. So I hope you really, really found that useful. There's so many ways you can go about really collating your data and presenting it, but that's an example of how I have done it in practice. So you can come up with the questions. I can't give you a template for questions to ask because it's really going to be dependent on your organization, what it is that you want to find out. But what I'm going to do right now is to look at questions you need to be asking yourself periodically. And these are questions that you can also ask yourself during an audit. So what are the current goals and objectives of communication? What did we even set out to do? Are we doing it? Are we on track? Are we far from track? Because if you don't have your goals and objectives in mind, and if you've watched my video on objective setting, I also have a course on it. That really is the foundation. That is really what helps you to define the value proposition of communications, of the communications team, and how it's helping the organization to achieve its goals. So how well is the current communications plan working? And remember, I said do this periodically. I will really suggest do this every quarter so that you can see what's not working. You can ask the right questions. Are your messages clear and consistent? Do you have a coordinated graphic identity? So this is something that you may want to ask during your interview. What do you think about our branding? Do you like our branding? Do you think it's consistent? Obviously, you don't want to ask leading questions, but just get people's perception on what they think about it. Are you reaching your key audiences with messages? Are you moving them to action? When you see communications from us, what comes to your mind? How does it make you feel? Does it make you do something? Do they immediately want to? Are they excited? I get some emails from some brand, immediately I click delete. I wait till the end of the day, and there's something I just do like mass select and mass delete. I don't even bother reading, because some people you unsubscribe, and you keep getting content from them. But there's some brands and some organizations, when I see their emails, I know that I'm getting value. I'm looking forward to it. I open it and I click links from that email. I listen to a website. I download something. What did they do when they see your communication? What communication has been most effective? You'd be surprised that the content that you thought would bang and go viral didn't even have any kind of impact, right? So these are the questions that you can't be asking. You should ask during your audit, and you should also ask periodically. And then what do customers think about your communication? Well, how is the tone that your organization uses to communicate? Are you communicating with the right tone? Is there a disparity with the tone and the personality? Sometimes you have an organization that is very, very conventional, that has this conventional personality, traditional personality, and then all of a sudden in social media, they try to sound cool, or it sound like they're the boy next door, the girl next door. There's some sort of disparity. There has to be, or they want to be the one that cracks the joke, the funny brand, but then they have a very stiff and rigid personality. There's going to be a disconnect there. And then your communication support the overall strategic plan of your organization. And that's where it is, ladies and gentlemen watching this video. Your communications, your work as a communications professional, your communications plan need to really be supporting the overall strategic plan for the organization. And then what will make your communications more effective in the future? This is where you think about the recommendations, you think about the trends, you think about what's happening now, you think about opportunity areas, and the opportunity areas everywhere. And then what communications opportunities are we missing? So that's brought me to the end of this. I know it's been a lot to process, so I hope that you will watch this over and over again. But it's really, really valuable if you do it. If this is a really, really good time to do an audit. My next video on LinkedIn, I'm really going to look at what you should do when your communication strategy isn't working. And now that if you're going to watch this course between May and June, this is a good time to do an audit, because you're going to see what you can do better, what you can improve, so that October, November, you're proud to say this is what comes brought to the table. And the audit is really, really valuable. Just the insights that it brings. Every organization that I've done it for, it's been eye-opening, it's been enlightening. And I've carried the senior leaders along, I've carried the executives along, I've made them to see the benefit, because when you see insights of what your customer is saying, there's a way. So it's not you as a communicator. So yeah, let me say this. So you as a communicator may know we are actually not we're not communicating the right things, or we're not projecting ourselves the right way. You may be saying it and they'll be like, you're always saying this and da. But when they hear the customer say it, when they hear other staff members say it, when it comes to, there's a way that it wakes up senior leaders. I've seen it across board. So it really, really is valuable to do this. I hope that you found this valuable. If you have more questions, or if there's anything you want me to clarify, because I know that I went through a lot. In fact, I can do a 3-hour class on communications audit, breaking down how you should go through doing your interviews, who you should interview, or if there's a particular, maybe you have a unique situation with your organization, please feel free to connect with me. That's my website, www.adedoinjaisimi.com. That's my email, adedoin@thecomsavenue.com. Connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have. But most importantly, I hope that you're able to take the things that I have shared in this video, in this course rather, and you're able to implement them. And I hope that you're able to see results, making sure that your work as a communicator within the organization is valuable and is valuable and valued by your senior leadership. Thank you so much for purchasing this course. Thank you so much for engaging with my content online, and looking forward to engaging with you further as well. Bye.